My dashboard clock read 1:47 p.m. Every red light on the way home felt like a personal affront, a petty plot by the cosmos to keep me from being where I wanted to beg horizontal on my sofa, with the silence of my own home weighing down on me. 12 hours. A 12-hour shift in the ER is never truly 12 hours. It's a compressed lifetime of pandemonium, a symphony of beeping monitors, hurried footfall, and the thin, ready sound of human pain. Tonight's concerto was extremely tough. A multi-car pileup on the freeway had filled our bays with shattered bodies and lives. I had spent the last 3 hours of my shift fighting to keep a young man's heart pumping after a piece of rebar became lodged in his chest. We had lost him. You try to erect walls and compartmentalize, but the ghosts of those you can't save constantly ride home with you. They sit in your passenger seat, silent and heavy. So, yes, I was tired. That's not the correct word. Tired refers to persons who miss an hour of sleep. I was hollowed out, an empty vessel fueled by stale coffee and adrenaline. My scrubs felt like they were bonded to my skin, and they smelled vaguely of antiseptic and something metallic that I couldn't identify. My feet were throbbing with a dull ache, and the takeout box of pad thai on the seat next to me, my only intended solace for the evening, exuded a sad, lukewarm energy. All I desired was refuge. The turn onto my street, a quiet little cul-de-sac tucked away from the main road, felt like an exhale after holding my breath all day. It marked the beginning of the decompression chamber. The houses were modest, the gardens were clean, and the most audible sound was generally Mrs. Gable's wind chimes 2 doors down. It was my slice of predictable, uninteresting serenity. My house, my driveway, was the final barrier. Crossing it meant that the outer world, with its beeping equipment and mourning families, no longer existed. It was a sacred barrier. And tonight, that border was broken. There it was, parked right in the middle of my driveway, glistening beneath the porch light like a monument to someone else's conveniencing a clean white SUV. Jack Suvig Jack, my neighbor to the left. A guy in his late 30s who worked in tech sales or something similar, and who seemed to perceive the world as a series of little hurdles to his own comfort. My heart did not simply sink, it plummeted. It was not the first time. This wasn't even the fifth. My patience had been slowly eroding, like 1,000 paper cuts. I first gave him the benefit of the doubt approximately 2 months ago. He was hosting a party, cars lined the street, and his driveway was filled. He'd parked right at the edge of mine, blocking me in. I needed to get to work, so I strolled over, knocked on the door, and respectfully asked him to leave. "Oh, hey, sorry about that," he added with a big, carefree smile. "Just a sec." It took him 10 minutes to emerge, smiling with a friend and nonchalantly backing his car out. There is no actual apology, only the vague irritation of being interrupted. The second time, he was getting furniture delivered. His car was in his driveway, but the delivery truck was blocking the street, so he pushed his wife's automobile into my driveway to clear the way. I returned home from a grocery run to discover my way barred. I sat in my car for 15 minutes till they finished. He gave me a jaunty wave as he drove the automobile. A wave, as if we were simply two friends having a friendly moment. It escalated from there. Just a few minutes to unpack the goods. He spent an hour there because his in-laws were visiting and he wanted to leave the spot in front of the house free for them. Each time, my demands to not use my driveway became a bit more strained, and his apologies became a little more perfunctory. He was the master of non-apology. "My bad." "Hoops. Sorry. Didn't think you'd be home so soon." Each word was a subtle dismissive, implying that my right to my own things was less important than his immediate need. He was slowly and painstakingly educating me that my limits did not matter. But tonight was different. Tonight there was no celebration, no delivery truck. His own driveway was entirely empty. There was no explanation or excuse, just sheer, unadulterated sloth. He had parked in my driveway because it was only a few steps from his front door. That white SUV was more than just a physical barrier. It was a billboard proclaiming his complete contempt for me. For a whole minute, I sat in my car, the motor idling and the headlights casting a sharp glare on his license plate. The ghost in my passenger seat appeared to sigh. The pad thai was certainly cold now. I could park on the street, of course. There was a location a few homes down. I could take my purse and food, secure my car, and stroll up the sidewalk in my worn-out sneakers, my aching body complaining with each step. I could let him win again. But the image of the young man on the operation table sprang to me. The useless effort, the harsh realization that sometimes, no matter how hard you fight, you will lose. I fought for 12 hours a day, surrounded by pandemonium beyond my control. I could not, come home only to lose here, not in my personal sanctuary. My hand shook slightly from tiredness and a burst of chilly rage as I groped for my phone. I browsed through my contact list, my thumb hovering over his name, Jack Neighbor. Take a deep breath. Jenna, be a grown-up. Use your words. One final time. He answered on the third ring, his voice loud and enthusiastic over what sounded like a basketball game on television. Hello. Jack, it's Jenna. Oh, hey, neighbor. What's up? The casual familiarity felt like sandpaper on my sensitive nerves. I'm home from work, I murmured, my tone lower than I wanted. You're parked in my driveway. There was a slight delay. I heard a muffled sound, as if he was covering his phone to say something to someone else. Oh, right. Shoot, sorry about that. My in-laws just left, and I just kind of pulled in there. I'll be out in a bit to move it. A bit, I inquired, the words tasting acidic. Jack, I just worked a 12-hour shift. I'm exhausted, and I really need to get into my house. Can you please come move it now? This is where the script would always flip. This was the point at which his outward neighborliness faded, replaced by an irritated sigh. The sound of a guy being profoundly inconvenienced by an entirely reasonable request. Look, Jenna, the game's in the fourth quarter. It's a nail-biter. Can't you just park on the street for a little while? It's no big deal. It's not a huge deal. 4 words. 4 simple words landed like a punch in the gut. It's no huge deal if you're locked out of your own home. It is not a huge problem for you to be insulted. It's not a big deal if my convenience outweighs your basic property rights. My tiredness, my demanding job, my simple longing for peace. None of it mattered to him. My entire existence was but a footnote in the story of his evening. Something inside me, a fuse that had been slowly burning for 2 months, had finally ignited the powder. The tiredness did not go away. Instead, it crystallized into something harsh and pointed. It was a moment of complete, terrifying clarity. I was finished negotiating. I was done being the nice neighbor who quietly tolerated his selfishness. He had just shattered our social compact, the implicit law of mutual respect, and he was completely unaware of it. You're right, Jack, I answered, my voice unusually calm. It's not a big deal. Great, awesome. I'll move it after the game, promise. He seemed relaxed, pleased to have handled this tiny nuisance. Don't worry about it, I whispered, a calm smile spreading across my lips in the darkness of my vehicle. I'll handle it. Okay, cool. Thanks for understanding, Jenna. You're the best. He hung up. I was staring at the phone in my hand. You're the best, he said, thanking me for my upcoming submission. He believed he had won. He assumed I would run away and park on the street like a nice little girl. He was about to learn how I handled little issues. I didn't leave my car. The ghosts had vanished, replaced by a single, focused purpose. I opened my online browser and entered 3 words, towing company near me. A list appeared, complete with star ratings and 24-hour service badges. I skipped the first 2 and chose the third option on the list, A to B towing. Fast, reliable, no fuss. It sounded ideal. My finger was hovering over the call button. This was it. This was the point of no return. Once I made this decision, my weak, fake friendly connection with my neighbor would be destroyed. There would be awkward glances over the fence and whispered chats with other neighbors. I might become that crazy nurse, the one who had a man's car towed. Half of me, the conflict avoidant, people-pleasing half that had been conditioned by years of de-escalating heated situations in the ER, yelled at me to stop. Just park on the street. To let go. It's only an automobile. It's only for a few hours. But the new part of me, formed in the crucible of this ultimate insult, was stronger. This was not about an automobile. It was about respect. It was about the sanctity of my home, my only shelter from a world that was stealing everything from me piece by piece every day. He had trespassed on that sanctuary, and he justified it as no big deal. Okay, I would follow his rationale. Towing an automobile is typical procedure for an illegally parked vehicle. It's a straightforward, impersonal transaction. It's not a huge deal. I pushed the button. On the first ring, a harsh voice responded. A to B towing. Hello, I said, keeping my voice steady. I need a vehicle removed from my private property. Address. I gave it to him. It's blocking your driveway. Completely, I replied. It's parked in the center of it. Got the make and model. It's a newer model white SUV. I think it's a Ford Explorer. All right. We got a driver about 10 minutes out from your area. Standard private property impound. It'll be a flat fee of $300 for the owner to get it back from the yard. Cash or card. We need your name and a signature on the authorization form when our driver gets there. You the homeowner? Yes, I am, I said, a pleasure coursing through me at the number. $300. That seemed like a big enough problem. Okay, ma'am. He's on his way. Name's Omar. He'll give you a call when he's turning onto your street. Thank you, I said. Before hanging up, I finally shut off the automobile. The hush that ensued was profound. The decision has been made. The die was cast. Now all I needed to do was wait. I collected my purse and the sad, chilly box of pad thai and walked around Jack's illegally parked SUV one last time. I unlocked my front door, walked inside, and placed my belongings on the kitchen counter. I did not switch on the main lights, only the tiny lamp above the stove. I entered the living room, which fronted the front of the house, and sat in my favorite armchair, which had worn out arms and faced the window. And I watched. The minutes passed by. I ate my pad thai directly from the package, using a fork. The noodles were clumpy and the chicken was rough, but it was the most filling dinner I'd had in months. With each frigid, starchy bite, I felt some of my power return. I was no longer a victim of circumstance. I was a person of prominence. I wasn't the fatigued nurse trying to avoid a conflict. I was a landowner guarding her property. My phone vibrated. It was a local number. This is Omar with A to B. I'm on your street. You the one with the white Explorer in the drive. That's the one, I answered quietly. I noticed the tow truck's yellow lights flashing at the end of the cul-de-sac, sending long, dancing shadows across the manicured lawns. All right, be there in a sec. Just need you to come out and sign the paperwork. I'll be right out. I watched as the heavy-duty truck, a beast of diesel and steel, moved slowly and deliberately down the street. It didn't use its horn, and the engine made a low rumble, yet its presence felt tremendous. The cavalry arrived in the middle of night. Omar, a large man with a calm, professional air, parked carefully on the street. The truck inclined properly towards Jack's SUV and got out, clipboard in hand, to meet me at the edge of my grass. He didn't ask any questions. He didn't make small talk or ask about the backstory. To him, this was simply a job. An illegally parked car was an unlawfully parked vehicle. It was elegantly and refreshingly basic. Just need you to sign here at the bottom, ma'am, he added, pointing with a fat finger. This just authorizes the tow and confirms you're the property owner. I signed my name. The ink stroke felt solid and decisive. All right, he answered, returning the clipboard. Should only take me a few minutes. You can head back inside if you want. I think I'll watch, I replied with a faint smile. He nodded, a hint of comprehension in his eyes. He'd probably seen this 100 times. He went about his business with almost balletic efficiency. He backed up the truck, the backup beeper emitting courteous, insistent chirps in the silent night. He lowered the lift, slid the slings under the SUV's front wheels, and with a moan of hydraulics, the front of Jack's pride and joy was hoisted unceremoniously into the air. The tires, which had been solid and impenetrable just minutes before, dangled helplessly. The entire surgery took less than 5 minutes. Omar performed a last inspection, secured the vehicle, and gave me a final, brief nod. He went back into his cab, and with a deep roar, the truck drove away, carrying the white SV behind it like a seized trophy. Then quiet. I stood on my grass and gazed at my driveway. It was vacant. Glorious, magnificent, and blessedly vacant. A tremendous surge of relief flooded over me, nearly causing my knees to buckle. It was over. I'd won. I returned home, locked the door, and, for the first time that night, took a full, deep breath. The air tasted of victory. I knew that the other shoe would drop. The encounter was unavoidable. I assumed it would happen in the morning, when he tried to leave for work and discovered his car missing. But I'd underestimated the appeal of a late-night snack run or an early morning workout. The storm hit far sooner than anticipated. It was roughly an hour later. I'd taken a searing hot shower to wash away the day's grime and grief, and now I was resting on my couch, covered in my favorite blanket, lazily scrolling through my phone. That was when I heard the shouts. "What the? Where's my car? Where the hell is my car?" It was Jack's voice, full of perplexity and dread. I heard his front door bang, followed by his footsteps on the pavement outside. I did not move. I just listened. "Honey, someone stole the car! Call the police!" he cried as he returned to his house. A moment later, I heard a woman's voice. His wife, Sarah. "What are you talking about? Stole it from where?" "From the neighbor's driveway. I left it right here." A beat of quiet. Sarah's voice seemed quieter, but I could still hear it through my window. "You left it in Jenna's driveway again, after she asked you not to." "Jack, seriously, it was just for a little while. Oh my God, this is a nightmare. I can't believe this." This was the bit I hadn't quite expected. Collateral damage. His wife sounded humiliated. And then I heard two more voices, an elderly man and a lady, clearly his in-laws, who must have been staying overnight. "What's going on, Jack? What's with all the yelling?" the man said. "Dad, someone stole the SUV." "From where?" "Jenna's driveway." The silence that followed was full with judgment. Our in-laws, the people for whom he allegedly saved the best parking spots. I felt a brief feeling of shame for them. They were innocent bystanders in this drama. But the feeling faded shortly. They were bystanders to a crisis that their son-in-law had caused wholly on his own. Then came the hammering on my door. It was not a knock. The frame trembled with a frenzied, angry hammering. "Bam! Bam! Jenna, open up! Did you see anything? Someone stole my car." I took a calm and deliberate inhale. I stood up from the couch, my motions smooth and measured. I walked to the door, my heart hammering like a steady, repetitive drum. This was it, the climax. I turned on the porch light and unlocked the deadbolt. I only opened the door enough to see him. His face was red and blotchy, and his hair was a mess. He wore basketball shorts and a tattered shirt. Behind him, his wife stood with her arms crossed, looking ashamed. Her parents were standing behind her, looking out from their own doorway, their faces filled with uncertainty and disdain. The audience for his public humiliation had assembled. "Jenna, thank God. Did you hear anything? Did you see anyone? My car is gone," he said, his voice a half octave too high. I gazed at him, my expression very neutral. I let the silence to hang in the air for just a moment, long enough to be unpleasant. "It wasn't stolen, Jack," I replied calmly. His frenzied expression faded, replaced by confusion. "What? What do you mean it wasn't stolen?" "It's gone. I had it towed," I explained. The words struck the calm cul-de-sac with the power of a physical strike. Jack glanced at me with his mouth slightly open. He appeared to be struggling to process a sentence in a foreign language. "You." "What?" he muttered. "I had it towed," I said, my voice remaining level and calm. "It was illegally parked on my private property." His uncertainty turned into sputtering wrath. "Are you kidding me? You had my car owed. Why would you do that? You could have just asked me to move it. I did, I answered. I called you. You told me the basketball game was more important and that I should just park on the street. He genuinely flinched, indicating that he remembered the conversation accurately. But his attitude of entitlement was a powerful force. So you had it towed over a basketball game. That's insane. That's completely unneighborly. We're supposed to look out for each other. Looking out for each other involves mutual respect, Jack. It means not treating my driveway like a public parking lot. I've asked you politely more times than I can count. I was done asking. His wife, Sarah, moved forward, her face palled. Jenna, I am so sorry about this. He had no right. But is there any way to undo it? Where is the car? It's at the A to B towing impound lot over on the industrial route. I explained, shifting my gaze to her for a moment. I had a glimmer of pity for her. They're open 24 hours. There's a $300 release fee. $300, Jack exclaimed, the number reverberating in the darkness. His father-in-law, a stern-faced man with white hair, stepped forward from his own porch. You parked in her driveway after she asked you not to, son. He inquired, his tone low and disapproving. Jack's face changed from crimson to purple. He was being chastised in front of his wife, in-laws, and the neighbor he had offended. It was the perfect storm of humiliation. He redirected his rage back toward the only target he had left me. This is unbelievable. I cannot believe you would do this. It was just for a little while. It wasn't a big deal. So there it was, the magical words. He had delivered my closing sentence directly to me. I stared him dead in the eye, and for the first time, I allowed a frigid, then grin to cross my lips. You're right, Jack. You told me it wasn't a big deal, I murmured, my voice falling with the weight of every neglected request and moment of disdain. So I handled like it was no big deal. I maintained his look for another second, allowing the truth of my words to sink in, watching the rage in his eyes turn into the terrible awareness that he had been beaten fully and utterly by his own logic. And then I shut the door. I did not slam it. I closed it softly and forcefully. The deadbolt's click into place served as the last punctuation point. Outside, there was a moment of astonished stillness, followed by his wife's furious, ashamed hissing and her father's low, disappointed voice. I walked away from the door, ignoring the remainder of their family drama. It was no longer my problem. The aftermath was quiet. The next morning, I observed Jack and his father-in-law leave in the elder man's car, presumably for the impound lot. When they returned with the white SUV, he parked it exactly in his driveway, with no tire extending beyond the property line. He scurried inside without looking at me. In the weeks that followed, the dynamics on our small cul-de-sac changed. Jack gave no more pleasant waves, no more casual, "Hey, neighbor." He avoided making eye contact at all costs. Sarah, on the other hand, always offered me a tiny apologetic grin when she saw me. One afternoon, I discovered a gift basket on my porch containing a bottle of wine, some cheese, and a card written by her that simply read, "I'm sorry. I appreciate the gesture." I didn't experience a wave of triumphant joy. Revenge, I discovered, does not taste like champagne and fireworks. It tastes like tranquility. It tastes like getting home from a soul-crushing day to find an empty, waiting driveway. It's the calm satisfaction of a clearly defined and respected limit. I may be neighbor who had his car towed. Now, I might have given up any prospect of a false friendship for the sake of principle. And that was a trade I'd gladly make again. I had to play the bad guy to regain my peace. I had to make a great fuss to show that my comfort, home, and respect were never insignificant. And now, every time I pull into my driveway, unimpeded and uncontested, I know his $300 lesson was well worth it.